Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 6:17 p.m. on February 10th, 2025. My name is Don Gosney, and I welcome everyone to the meeting of West Contra Costa Unified Schools Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. This meeting is being hosted at the WCCUSD Facilities Building, 1400 Marina Way South, on Monday, February 10th, 2025. All members of the public are welcome to speak on any issue tonight that is on the agenda. There are speaker forms on the table that must be turned in prior to the agenda item being called. We also offer an opportunity under public forum to speak on any issue under the control of the CBOC that is not on the agenda. Depending on the number of speakers signed up to speak, we request public comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. My goal is to ensure that every voice is heard as long as it's on the business at hand and respectful. Under public comment, with limited exceptions, the CBOC is not allowed to reply to comments or questions. With this being my first chairing of a CBOC meeting in several years, I'm going to ask in advance for the forgiveness of the CBOC staff and the public if I screw anything up. I can use all the help I can get. I'm the chair, but that just means I get to look like a big shot. The truth is that we're all here to accomplish the same things, and we need to work as a team. I want to give everyone a chance to speak, so if you have something to say, please raise your hand or get my attention. I will try to call on speakers in the order they get my attention. During staff presentations, please get the attention directly from the presenter. I want to remind everyone that we're being recorded and the system isn't as great as we might like, so when you speak, please speak loudly and clearly so you can be recorded where others can hear and make out what you're saying. If a motion is to be made, the maker of the motion and the seconder needs to state their name first so there's a clear recording of this. When it comes to voting on any motion, there are 4 ways to vote. A yes or a no vote should be self-evident. An abstention is for when you have no opinion one way or the other. And if you just do not want to vote, please just say present. That way the record records at least that a vote was cast. We need to maintain a quorum of 6 members in the room. Right now we have 5. If we have fewer than 6 for any reason, the way we conduct our meetings changes. If you leave early or even if you have to leave for a bio break, if we fail to have the requisite quorum, the minutes will have to take note. We can continue to have presentations, but no votes. The goal of our meetings is to conclude our business in 2 hours, but if we need to extend, this will only occur with the consent of the body. If we run out of time, so some items may need to be deferred to a future meeting. Please stay focused on our real purpose, to oversee the bond funds and the bond projects. Everything else is just icing on the cake. As you know, the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance, the land, labor, and body acknowledgement, and their anti-racism policy have become controversial issues when it comes to reciting them at the beginning of committee meetings. I've asked the superintendent for questions to be answered, so when it's brought up for discussion at our next meeting, we will know more. Thank you very much on that part. Okay. Do we want to say anything about our translation options?
I'm still getting that set up. I apologize.
Okay,
for the delay.
When you're ready, please let me know on that. Our Secretary, Ms. Yee, can we get the roll call?
Yes, it's the roll call. Chair Don Gosney.
I'm here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Brendan Heavener Dunton.
He's on vacation. Hopefully he's having a very good time with his family.
Thank you. Secretary Ariel C. Present. Member Jia Ma. Absent. Member Andrew Butt.
Here.
Thank you. Member Andrea Landy.
Here.
Thank you. Member Anna Johnson. Absent. Member Lynn Johnson. Absent. Member Lauren Hills.
Present.
Thank you.
I've talked to as many of the CBOC members as I can about attending in person as opposed to attending via Zoom. If they attend via Zoom, as I believe Lynn Johnson is tonight, I want to treat her as a member of the CBOC, but at the same time, she has no vote. Okay, she is just a member of the public. The laws changed last year. You have to be here in person to be considered a representative of the CBOC. Okay, but again, I will do everything I can to treat her as public. Also, please take note in your minutes that we have trustee Smith Folds and trustee Hernandez
And President Reckler.
and board president Reckler
Thank you.
on via Zoom. Okay,
I just have a question.
yes, ma'am.
Is it, 5 required for a quorum or 6? On the
6.
agenda, it says 5. Okay, so we.
Okay, thank you. I'll
Well, we got a new member, right?
Who?
The lady that you just sent the link to?
Oh, no, she's not a member yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay. Okay, hang on. Excuse me if I take notes. This is one of the problems of using old agendas as a foundation.
Okay, no worries.
I do worry that good. I completely ignored and did not put on the link for the Zoom or the phone number. Because the last time I put one of these together, Zoom wasn't even a business yet. So thankfully the Sylvia took care of me on that.
So do we members or 5 members present?
We only have,
We only have 5 here.
correct,
Do we need 6?
for a quorum. We do not yet have a quorum.
Right.
Okay, but we are still gonna conduct our business, getting presentation and discussions. Okay, we just can't take a vote until we get a 6th person that shows up. Okay. Okay, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Not at this time.
Okay. No public comment. And we are going to go straight into the district reports. I want to make sure the district reports also include the financial reports. We had difficulty getting the financial reports in our normal suite. You may have heard about this big storm that hit the area last week. Well, it also hit our school district, and our very limited staff was busy trying to keep our buildings from washing down the street as opposed to putting together financial reports. But we do have a few of them. They were printed out and put on the table. Okay, want to make sure everybody's got a copy of that. But we'll go ahead and turn things over to staff for their reports.
Good evening, thank you. Our first presentation tonight is the project status report, and so I'll turn it over to Ms. Mejia Hooper.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to February. We have our standard chart to start us off. For Siege, I apologize for being late. I was coming from the school site council meeting from Siege, so we're really excited to get that design underway. Kennedy and Richmond modernizations, we're moving through design development. Or design development for phase 1 is complete. We're kicking off design development for phase 2, while construction documents are in motion for phase 1. The Kennedy Critical Needs Project, we have a variety of different subsets of that, and the biggest one right now is the admin relocation. And so you'll see some construction photos later for that. We are also actively, our LLB, our lease-back contractor, OVRA is actually actively bidding the demolition package. For Lake, Hercules and Shannon, we have construction slides. Hercules, we had the ribbon cutting just last week, which was fun. And for Pinole Valley, the architectural contract went to the board on the 5th. And so we're going to get that DSA package going, and that will allow construction to move forward. So for Lake Elementary School.
Before we go to that slide, I apologize, but I did not hear. You said overall was bidding on the demolition. Which school?
Kennedy.
Thank you. I thought so, but I didn't,
Yes.
in one ear, out the other.
All right, for Lake Elementary School, we're busy putting in, the ductwork as well as the plumbing and electrical rough-ins. So all of the utilities that run behind and in between the walls, all of those things are going in right now. And so next slide. We also completed, the last month we were here, we were talking about how the stage pour hadn't happened. Well, the stage is now poured. So we have concrete on the stage level. So all of our building pads are in place. Framing has gone up around the NPR and is further along than this picture shows now. But we have gone vertical on the NPR, so that's exciting. For Hercules, as I was saying, we had the ribbon cutting last week. And so that involved also getting all of the things moved in. So previously we didn't have furniture. We were still working on the punch list. Those things are all moving along, and they've officially moved into the building.
Before you move on, I attended the ribbon cutting along with a lot of other people. I mean, I'm glad because of the weather, they moved it from outside to inside one of the classrooms. It's a good thing the fire marshal didn't drop by for a visit because we kind of exceeded it by a factor of 3, the capacity. But it was we CBOC members have gone for site visits at that construction project several times over the past year. It looks a lot nicer now than it did. All the paint's dry, all the construction tools are out of the way. It was very nice. There was a lot of very inspirational speeches. I had a really great team of 16 young ladies doing a dance routine for us in the beginning. They had the marching band that were playing. They weren't marching. There was no place to march. And then they had the ribbon cutting twice, 2 different directions to make sure everybody could see it. But it was a very nice affair, as long as we stayed out of the rain.
Yeah,
I'd like to add, there was beautiful speeches by the students. Senior Alina Khan shared that this represented a launch pad for dreams and a sanctuary for curiosity and creativity. It was wonderful to hear the students express kind of what it meant as seniors leaving, right? These weren't spaces that they got to enjoy. But it was really inspiring. There were student-led tours, and the Hercules community parents came. It was a flexible event because, of course, it was planned to be outside and it had to move inside, and it was pouring down rain. But it was incredible to hear our students describe what the space meant to them. So I wanted to share that with the team today.
I videotaped all the speeches, and when I trim out some of this stuff at the beginning and the end, I will share the YouTube video with everybody so that you can watch in the comfort of your own home in a dry space.
Although I do have to say the outside patio, the covered outside patio came in handy. We used it to the utmost, and the band appreciated not being in the rain. So, and we appreciated the band not trying to fit in the classroom. So it was lots of fun. Shannon's multi-purpose room, we are moving along there as well. The rain did slow us up to some extent, but we did get the roof closed in. So we've got plywood on the top, not quite to the point of the actual roof material. But as you can see, the previous month, we could see the sky through the top, and now you can't see the sky anymore. So we're making progress. Then also last month, we weren't fully closed in on the NPR space. So I want to take an opportunity to show some of the design components. This is really showing the 2 sides that open up to the campus. So we'll have the upper area will be a semi-translucent material that'll allow light in but limit heat gain and glare, where the bottom areas that you see open will be either roll-up doors with glass or glazing within regular operating doors or just window spaces. So really fun, a lot of light coming in and a lot of connection to the existing school facility, which their current portable has no windows. So this is going to be a dramatic change of having a naturally daylit facility. Then the critical needs project at Kennedy, like I was saying earlier, there's a variety of projects that are kind of folded into that title. One of them that is actively under construction is our admin relocation. We have been doing utility trenches to be able to connect the low voltage. We have a new run coming in for our internet as well as our phone lines. So this, last time we had only removed the concrete. This time we've gotten down to the dirt, and this actually has the pipes and the slurry in. It's just hard to tell. But we're getting ready for over the February break to be able to make the switch over on some of these systems. So the conduits are in and the lines are being pulled, which is great. We also have the data racks officially in, so it's starting to look more and more like a data room. So they're empty now, but soon they will be full of switches, and control panels and backup batteries. So all of those things are in the works. Then of course we have our construction status reports, as well as our newsletters.
And before we move into financial reports, we also have a special presentation for Stage that's not included in the packet, but it's part of our project report that we'd like to share today.
Before you even get to that, can you make the formal announcement about translation services available?
Absolutely. So we do have translation services available via Zoom.
If you hit the globe at the bottom, you'll be able to access the Spanish.
Thank you. Sure.
I have a question for Ellen. On your, there it is. The sheet where you have a breakdown, your project breakdown, it's slide 24. For Kennedy. In the little box up top, it says relocating fire panel to new MDF. What's an MDF?
And in the previous presentations, I had it written down so that I could say it correctly because I always forget the intermediate distribution. So the
What is
main
that?
distribution. So what it really is it's a place where all of our low voltage systems come together and come in. So we get utility services, right? Like everybody else, you have your AT&T line that comes in, right? Well, once it comes into our building, we have to distribute it out to the rest of the campus. So this room is the room where we get our internet service is through Conterra. So we get our internet service and we get our phone lines. And then we have all of the control panels for our low voltage systems. So we have our bell clock intercom system. We have our intrusion, our fire alarm, our regular internet and Wi-Fi. All of those different, well, the internet Wi-Fi doesn't have a control panel, but all those other ones do have a control panel. So the panels are there and we connect in the service and then we distribute it from that room out to the rest of the campus.
Oh, okay.
And then our internet comes in to a control bank and gets distributed out to all of our IDFs. And so that's really what that room is for. The problem that we had is that all of those systems were coming into the 100 and 200 building. So for us to be able to demolish that building, we had to move this room or reestablish a new room that allowed all of that to come in. We also had our new building, that's going to be the new building on Cutting, has a different footprint on the ground. And so we had to make sure when we installed all of the data lines that were coming in, that it didn't go underneath the new building's footprint. So we had to go out and around and back over to where our MDF room wanted to be because we don't want to run any utility lines under the new building. So that's what this building or this project is for. And that's what that meant. Main distribution frame. It comes to me eventually, but it's when it's like at the tip of your tongue, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. I apologize. I haven't, your name?
Lynn.
Okay, I thought you were. We just want to make sure. I've only seen you once, it was just in passing. But anyway, we now have a quorum. Lynn Johnson has arrived at
6:37.
6:37. Thank you.
Lynn,
Hi.
I would bet you were,
See that?
I've been here plenty of times, you guys. I just haven't been in the last probably 4 or 5 meetings. But
You're here now. That's all we care about. Good.
You're in person, that's nice.
Moving on to Steve.
Please. I'm sorry, Lynn, we just went over progress reports for some of the other projects, Kennedy, Richmond, Shannon, Lake, Berkeley Middle High School. But now we're moving on to an update on Stige.
All right, so Stige Elementary School is a campus rebuild project. We have our design build architect on board, and we are going through different user input meetings. And so we thought this was a good opportunity to talk about what gathering input really looks like. So one of the pieces that always comes into starting the project is we do have board-approved district-wide ed specs or educational specifications, as well as material and product standards. And the educational specifications really talk about how our educational program is transferred into physical space. And so when we talk about our kindergartens wanting to have center-based learning and being able to also incorporate outdoor learning, that kind of translates into the size of the room, as well as having sinks available and about having connection to the outdoor space. And so we create space and form around activity. And so understanding the activity is super important to being able to support our educational program. And that's really what the educational specifications talk about. They also talk about important things that we all hold as values, right? So making sure that the learning environment is conducive to learning by having thermal comfort and air quality and some of these other items that we know are important for students to be able to learn at their highest level. Those are all incorporated in the ed specs, as well as really boring stuff like signage standards. And so then we have the material product standard really talk about the quality of the material that we would like to have. We because of our environment is close to the ocean, even though we don't think about that, we do have a lot of salt in our air. And that can be corrosive to different metals. So we use a lot of stainless steel in our gutters and our flashing. And that's really in response to the environment around us. So that's one of the things that are in the material and product standards. We also have things that help our general maintenance over time. So items that we know work well and are good baselines for construction and can be maintained over time are all the products that we're listing in our product standards. Most of those just talk about the quality of the product. It doesn't say you have to use a particular manufacturer. It formally lists multiple manufacturers so that we can still get good pricing, but it does set a standard of what we're looking for to make sure we have a good value that will last over time. So those are the things that start our project and get distributed to our design teams before we start. Then we also have the existing site that tells us different things, right? The shape of the site can really affect how the design can come out. Michelle Obama was long and skinny, and that presented its own challenges, right? Where Lake, we had to keep it operational, and we also had a flood zone to work with. So we had to keep most of the buildings to one side because that was the site available to us. For Stige, it's a relatively small campus. It's also square and has two frontages to streets. So that's going to affect how we can lay out the different buildings and where we can get site access from. For the code and agency requirements, there's many codes that have to be followed. And those all have their own constraints that they build into how we lay out a campus and what's required there. One of the things that Stige doesn't currently do is it doesn't manage its own stormwater on site. So right now it rains, the water kind of rolls through the blacktop and goes straight into the storm system. We're no longer allowed to do that. And that's the same for Richmond and Kennedy. So we are building in things like biobasins and swales to be able to deal with our stormwater, but that's something that's never existed on that site before. And so those all change how we're able to implement things. We also work with our other district departments. We want to make sure that maintenance can maintain these buildings after we're done and that they understand the systems that are being put in. Nutrition services has lots of feedback on our kitchen design. IT, we want to make sure our systems are compatible with what they use around the district, as well as educational services. So all of these components are kind of the outside input that comes into design concepts. But then, of course, we have a very important part, which is the Stige interaction, right? And so we have school, community, and family input that tonight we were getting some from. We've had a couple other focus group meetings to be able to get different perspectives about what's important to the community and how that relates to the overall design and final layout. And a lot of times people are kind of confused on what that really means, right? What does it mean when because we ask questions about what their vision is and different components of community culture. And then you wonder, well, how does that relate to design? What does that process really look like? And when you talk about a feel of a building, when you walk into a site or a building, you feel different things. You feel compelled to do different things. Sometimes you feel welcome to just stay in a spot. Sometimes you feel like you should keep moving. All of those are related to the scale of the building, what the entry elements look like, where there's archways, where there's welcoming spots, colors and materials, where the windows are placed, and the architectural style. All of those components really are the things that help communicate that community culture and also alleviate some of the area of concern that are with the existing building. Circulation paths are really important, as well as adjacency, what things go next to one another. We've spent a lot of time talking about what wants to be on Cypress versus Potrero, how the TK wants to be next to the admin building. So those are all types of feedback that we're getting that allow us to place the buildings where they should be. And then we'll also be looking with the community about site elements. And so our outreach and engagement, we're actively working to be able to communicate about this project. Many of these things are things that we have done for all of our rebuild projects. We're going to create printed flyers to be able to be distributed, as well as mailing postcards to the nearby neighbors. We again have our good old construction newsletters, which I'm sure you guys all know and love. We do design editions when we're in a design to be able to communicate out things when there's moments in the process that's appropriate. We have our social media account that's across the board for all facilities. It's WCCUSD facilities, and we're on Facebook and Instagram. I have yet to tackle TikTok. It just confuses me. I'm sorry. I can't do it yet.
It's going away anyway.
So, but Facebook and Instagram, you can find us. We do post on that. And we have established a project website for Stige, which you can find off of the general facilities page, and then go under current projects. And there's a link there to the Stige project website. In addition to that, we have different ways that we're going to meet with folks. We have quarterly updates to the board planned. Those will also reflect our other major projects of Richmond and Kennedy. We'll have quarterly meetings with the community. we're here, CBOC, monthly updates. And they have the school site council and coffee chats when we are put on the agenda. Those are run by the school site, but if they ask us to attend, we will happily attend and give project updates there. As far as the overall timeline goes, similarly to Richmond and Kennedy, we have multiple phases that are really meant to try to accelerate the construction process. We do have a meeting on Wednesday to confirm our approach to demolition with DSA, Division of State Architect. As long as that goes well, we plan on demolishing in spring of 2025. So just coming up in a couple months here, Steve will be demolished and get us ready for what we call a site ready package. So that's really where we're doing preparation work for the underground utilities. People don't necessarily realize how long utility work takes, but it takes a comfortable amount of time because by the time you're done, the only thing you're left with is some marks in the asphalt that you did some trenching. And it's really anticlimactic for how much time it takes. But it's extremely important because that's where we get our water and our sewer and our electricity and low voltage and all those good things that we've come to love and appreciate within our buildings. So we're putting that together because those normally go through faster at the Division of State Architect, but to be able to bring those forward, we do need to settle on the building footprint placement as well as like plumbing and low voltage locations. So we do need to refine the design enough to be able to submit that. Once it's into DSA, we're hoping for construction over the winter of 25-26. Then we're also concurrently working on a building package, which is the primary construction package with all the good stuff of building the building. We are planning on completing design development, which is the majority of the input that comes from the school sites, folks, as well as community by May 2025. So when we roll into summer, we can do the construction documents, which really are focused around how you build the building versus the design of the building. And then we have submission in the fall of 2025 with construction beginning in spring of 26. With move-in on at 2027. Now, we all know that timelines can be fluid and depending on DSA review times and unforeseen conditions that will come about, especially on old sites. These might be adjusted, but this is our goal and what we're working towards. I think that's it. Right?
I have some questions.
Yeah, when you're doing your design, a big problem in the community is your drop off.
Yes.
Have you done a traffic survey or to see, because you have two streets there, to see where you would put that?
Right. I smile because we had an entire meeting dedicated to that earlier today where we were online with the civil engineer. So they have a traffic expert that they brought on board to one of the people within their firm to be able to discuss what we can do to be able to try to mitigate traffic. And that was also one of the major discussion points at the school site council tonight. So yes, we are discussing that and looking at it. With Cypress being a dead end street, it kind of changes some things. We also, while the city does not review our plans, they do have influence in their right of way. So we also are coordinating with the city and already have had one meeting with them to talk to them about whether additional curb cuts are possible on the site and what that looks like. So there's lots of players when it comes to traffic, and we are trying to hit them all up and move as quickly as possible through the process of being able to improve the overall drop-off and parking situation.
You're in charge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, on a related note, can you talk about how CEQA applies to a project like this, particularly relative to things like traffic and potential historical resources?
Right. So one of the things we're in contact with a group about CEQA And there is gonna be a historic survey that's happening, so, and that's actually happening at both Richmond, Kennedy and Stige. It's getting scheduled hopefully for sometime this week. And you know, CEQA really talks about how we affect, the existing that's different than what we've already done in the past. And so, it is something that we're keeping in mind as we're looking at different, curb cuts. We're a little early on Stage just because we haven't gotten, a layout just yet, and we are not finalized on kind of our gross square footage. So as soon as we get a little further along, we'll be able to have a ruling about which way to approach CEQA as appropriate. However, we don't foresee, because this was an existing campus that had more portables on it that were being used by the school site, that our capacity is going to be in pretty good shape for us to not have to do a full CEQA review. Yes.
So is climate change taken into consideration when you make design? For example, making the campus more climate resilient?
Right.
For example, like, heavier rains, hotter summers, things like that.
Yes, I mean, those things are being taken into consideration. We do have to do a site hazard analysis to understand where we are. And part of that is seismic zones and things, but the other is flood areas to confirm that we're not going to have issues as that continues. But the other pieces of just general good design, that thing I was talking about earlier with biobasins and different things of being able to handle our stormwater on site is definitely something that we're that helps not only our site, but the city in general. So if more sites controlled their stormwater and had some area of retainage, we lessen the amount of impact on the stormwater across the city. And so that's part of the green code, but it's also something important for the city as a whole, as part of how we can lessen the stress on the stormwater system as these storms obviously are becoming more intense. There is a requirement for us to create infrastructure and now to have solar on site for our projects, as well as charging for electric vehicles. And then we are adding air conditioning to this site. Previously, we did not have air conditioning in downtown Richmond or the lower areas of Richmond, but that is being considered and will be implemented with this design, knowing that our climate is changing and heat is becoming a thing. It doesn't really help us because it does up our energy requirements. We are also moving away from natural gas. So I foresee this being an all electric campus, even with our kitchen, which we are implementing already at Lake. So there's definitely a lot of considerations going into it. And then we're doing just what, you know, architects have known for decades, and sometimes we've forgotten. And that is, you know, making sure that our building orientation is well thought out, where the placement of the windows are well thought out, covering our walkways and entry points so that we don't drag everything that we walk on into the building, and have coverage for those kind of areas. So all of those things are part of this process.
Thank you.
Question. Are we planning, or are you planning right now for the current school size, population size? Or I know enrollment has fluctuated a lot at Stage, and like Kennedy, for example, plans are being made for a bigger student population. So are you planning right now for the current student population, or?
We're planning for beyond the current population, but that's one of the things that I was asked also tonight. We're going to do a comparison of what the residence rate is versus the number of people attending. We kind of hit a happy medium with that at Kennedy. There's concern from the community that we might not be considering that enough. So we're going to be reporting out on that further. But it is the capacity that we're planning for is above what the current enrollment is.
Just, a check. Is that owl supposed to move when we talk?
So there's different cameras built into it. So for people watching at home on Zoom, it uses movement and voice to detect it, and then it changes the filter, or it changes the camera that it's showing, but it doesn't move.
Okay, would we do a voice check with maybe trustee Reckler to see how, that they're hearing it, okay? Because we have some that have very low voices, you know.
Yeah, so, I was actually going to transition and say that we are joined tonight by Superintendent Dr. Moses, who's joining us via Zoom. So maybe she could give us a thumbs up if she's able to hear us okay. We wanted to do a little sound check. All right, we got a thumbs up.
Oh, good.
So it sounds like they can hear us well. And if there weren't any other questions.
Well, there's lots of questions.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at Melissa, I'm looking at myself and that whole side of the table.
Oh, good.
So that's what other people. Andrew, I guess you're not here.
Yeah.
What you?
So, yeah, just to kind of, I guess, add on to some of these questions around, both that you all talked about and that some of the CBOC board asked about around sustainable design issues. I know for many years, the district was designing per the CHIP standards. And I'm wondering if, what the decision was to go away from that. And if there was an assessment about, that it was too costly or that it was too cumbersome or what that meant, because obviously that was, I think, Ellen, you mentioned, we really try to do things like orient it in the proper solar orientation, things like that. And I think without a sort of prescribed, lead or CHIPS approach, which you're literally checking boxes that you're doing that and assessing it and getting it, verified by a third party, it seems like it's sort of left to, I don't know, some other less formal approach. And that might be before your time. I don't know when that decision was made, if that was a before decision or just sort of happened. But I think for those who may not have been around in those years, when there was a deliberate methodology, or down to design sustainable schools, and why we went away from that, and what are we doing now to address that?
It was before my time, when that decision was made. So when I came into this role, that was not a priority. One of the things that I know that's happened in the industry overall is that, back when LEEDs and CHIPS was really started, there was a definite gap in our regulatory agencies as far as how they looked at sustainable design and high-performing learning environments. And now a lot of those holes have been filled. The green code continually becomes more stringent, and the Title 24 codes are becoming more stringent. So I believe the concept behind why the district went away from it is partially due to the fact that California really caught up and being able to regulate making those kind of decisions part of the overall code requirement versus needing a third party to be able to validate that our designs were at that level. And even though we have gone away from doing the formal review, it is something that myself and the staff are looking very closely at and having many conversations about with the design professionals that are in play with the district. So although we do not follow the formal checklist between those two factors, we're definitely keeping it in mind as we move forward with our projects and trying to make the most cost conscious decisions that also lead to the best value over time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look, since there is a pretty extensive record there, right, from the bond program initiating in the early 2000s to now almost 25 years later, to see what, like, specifically around building performance and energy use, things like that. I don't know if that's data sets that you guys would better have accessible, but it would be, since they're readily available, it would be interesting to look at.
Yeah, then we can look into that further.
Any other questions from the CBOC before I jump in?
One more question for on the gathering input side. Is this process similar to the Richmond Kennedy High School process with architects meeting with some of the community or school and community members, or are the processes different?
It's similar, but at a different scale. Obviously, at the high school level, it's much more complicated. We have many more types of spaces. When you do a high school, you've got well over 100 different types of spaces. At an elementary level, we're closer to 25-ish. So it's not quite as extensive just because the pieces aren't as diverse, you know, but we will have individual meetings like with the kindergarten group to talk specifically about kindergarten. We've already had an admin meeting to talk about the administration layouts. So the bigger chunks of space types we will look at and have individual meetings with, but the scale is different between an elementary and a high school.
Anything else from the CBOC? Go ahead.
Stages in elementary school, are you going to have a transitional kindergarten there? And if you do, is there any extra construction that you have to do because it's a transitional kindergarten instead of a regular?
So the design of the room itself is the same. And it's under, from the California Department of Ed, it lands into the same category as a kindergarten classroom. So it'll have a connected restroom space and a connected playground area within the kindergarten complex, which is the requirement of Title V. We utilize the same playground space for both our TK and our kinder. However, the scale of it would like to be a little larger since we have more classes of kindergarten. In general, Stage is a very small site. So we are going to have to make choices about how to use that site space. That becomes a little complicated when you're dealing with the size of acreage we have. But no, beyond it being another room, it isn't any more or different from our kindergarten classes.
The reason I question that is because Proposition 39 does not state funds to be used for a transitional kindergarten. They didn't exist at that time. And also our bond issues were passed before there was such a thing as a transitional kindergarten. And yet we're going to be using those funds for it. So if there's some in your 2015 plan that you came out with, you said that there might be some construction that needs to be considered for a transitional, different from a kindergarten. So I just want to make sure you have that in mind.
And just to clarify, we're going to be using Fund 25 to pay for the transitional kindergarten facilities. And so we have various funding sources we're using for the projects. So the bond funds will not be used for the TK facilities at Lake or at Stage. We're using Fund 25.
Good, good. I think what they have to do is that the schools have to get together and ask for an opinion similar to the Attorney General's opinion on salaries for people working on the bond program, but they haven't done that yet. So I want to make sure that the funds are used properly. But that's a good answer.
Well, and part of the structure of why it is called transitional kindergarten is because it really is meant to be a 2-year kindergarten program. And that's how the state has relayed that out to the world. And so it counts inside the kindergarten program definition.
Just a follow-up question. So do you split the cost of design proportionally?
Yes, so, for example, at Lake and Stige, it's design build. And so when they submit an invoice, we separate the design fees from the construction fees. And we do that with our account code. We use the standard account code structure, the SACS code. And so we use the object code to differentiate between design and construction.
Sorry, I didn't say my question clearly. I mean, do you split the cost of design part of like regular K to 5 grade and part of TK? Two parts.
So for the.
Because you mentioned that you use different font to for TK.
So when I do the financial reports presentation, I'd be happy to show you how you'll be able to see that differentiation in the account code. So the first two numbers identify the fund. When it's bond funded, it'll start with the number 21. When we use our developer fees, which is called the capital facilities fund, it'll start with 25. And so bond funds are kept in a separate fund. And so if we were to pull the report of all of the expenditures from the project, it would be very easy to see which fund paid for it and what type of services using the different segments of the account.
So the cost of design is from our bond and it covers TK to 5th grade, the whole school. The design.
So the design and construction for the TK facilities will be funded with Fund 25. The design and construction of kinder through will be Fund 21, bond fund.
Okay, so my question is, how do you split that into different into two parts? Like TK, design TK is part of overall design, right? So how do you separate
We'll do,
overall
it's
cost
done,
into
yeah.
part of like TK cost, part of regular K2?
It's gonna be done proportionally by the amount of square footage.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the CBOC before I go there? Okay. A lot of what I'm going to be asking about right now is keep in mind, this is the first time that the public has been made aware of most of this information at a public meeting. I know there have been a number of semi-public meetings in the Stige community, but the rest of the world has not been invited to those. The rest of the world didn't even know they existed. So we're talking about meetings. On Kennedy, Richmond, Stige, any of these projects, if we're going to have any public meetings, can you please send out a notification to the CBOC so that they could attend? I mean, Kennedy and Richmond, most of the time I found out about the meetings after the fact. You had an awful lot of them, but it doesn't do any good to find out there was a meeting last night. And it's just, it would be very helpful. Yeah, my schedule may not be there where I can attend them, but at least it's my choice now. But I got 4 areas of concerns that I appreciate just however you want to try to explain this. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Stige, how old it was, that kind of stuff? Why are we doing this? What happened? I know that there was a lawsuit that was filed, but what brought that lawsuit about? Comparative cost. We've been told, for instance, that the board authorized a rebuild of Stige comparable to what was done at Lake. That's what we were hearing. But the cost of Stige is at least $25 million less than what was being spent for Lake. So talk about that. Talk about the funding. Where is the money coming from? We heard at the December 18th that the district found $18 million. Can you explain that a little bit, please? Talk about the budget. How much are you budgeting it for? We had a tremendous amount of misinformation since this all blew up at the beginning of the summer. We had candidates for office running for Board of Trustee that guaranteed the community that they could get a brand new Stige in 1 year, even though the amount of money was never going to cover what it's going to cost. You've got members of the community that are coming in there guaranteeing that only members of a certain ethnicity will be allowed to build the school. Trying to appease the people in that community. There's a lot of misinformation, and so what I'm trying to do is to straighten things out here and getting information from people that actually know something to you.
Well, I think what's important to know is that the board approved the budget increase from the Stige Critical Needs Project, which was approved in the Facilities Master Plan, to the Stige Modernization. And that happened somewhere around November of 2023. Then it was at the December 18th meeting when the board approved the budget for the full Stige campus rebuild. The funding for Stige, as was presented to the board at that meeting, is a combination of developer fees as well as savings from other projects that have been closed, projects that had been completed. Essentially, the board approves a scope and a budget. And so once that project is complete, there may be dollars remaining, and those dollars can return to fund balance. That was one of the big strategies of the 2016 Facilities Master Plan, was to use project savings and to also aggressively leverage state dollars. And so when we get the chance to present the financial reports here in a little bit, we'll talk about some of the applications that we currently have with the state. To date, the district's received it's almost $230 million that we've received from the state facilities program, applying for a number of different things. There's different types of programs at the state level. So when we have a project that qualifies, then we submit an application for those funds. And we'll continue to aggressively submit applications. And now with the passage of Prop 2, which was approved by the voters in November, there are dollars at the state again. So when you submit an application, once you have a DSA approved project, and then you go on what's called a workload list as it's received, because all districts are submitting applications. And then there's a number of different kind of procedures that the state goes through to work through the workload list. And so that's really where the funding for Stige has come from, is from a variety state dollars that we've received, project savings from projects completed, as well as using developer fund fees. It's called the Capital Facilities Fund to pay for the TK facilities at Lake and Stige. I'm trying to think if there was another question there.
Well,
So-
tell us what the history.
Yeah.
So
So
how old is the school? What's the status of it?
it
What
was
is on?
built in 1943. And then we have a variety of portables that had been added over time, for a temporary campus that then was used by various district departments. And so, it was identified as the third, rebuild in the 2016 master plan. It was known at the time for, when we did the assessment, part of the reason that it was third in line was that there was major need on that campus. And that has not changed as we've moved further from 2016.
Okay. Before we get too far away, you mentioned Prop 2. I've been told by people involved with school bonds that Prop 2 money cannot be used on design build projects. Is that accurate?
I have not heard that.
Maybe that's something.
So there's a
to
number
validate.
of stakeholder meetings that are taking place right now to finish kind of filling in the administration of Prop 2. So it's not all settled. And so There's ongoing stakeholder meetings. So as that becomes more clear, we're happy to bring additional information.
Can you tell me what the current approved budget is?
So the current approved budget, off the top of my head, I believe it.
Is it 61 million?
51.
What?
I think it's 61.
Yeah, because it was 43.8 plus the 18 million found money. It could be, yeah, in the neighborhood of 61. Yeah. Okay. You wanted to discuss it all about what brought this all about so suddenly in the beginning of the summer? About the problems at Stige that brought on the lawsuit?
So there was work performed during the summer. Concerns were raised and the decision was made to relocate the Stige community to a temporary campus. There is a separate co-located campus at Dijon Middle School, which is serving as the Stige Temp campus and will until the rebuild is complete and they will move into their new home.
Are we busing the kids to the temporary campus?
Yes.
And is that money coming out of general fund or is it coming out of bond money?
So there are rules about when bond funds can be used for busing. So at this time, it is not being paid for with bond funds.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, the relocation of the students when they, for Wilson rebuilt was a shocker when we were told it's going to cost like $800,000 a year to bus the students for 2.5 years. And so, yeah, that's it. Knowing that and having an idea about that is important to know. I would like to be able to see on some of these projects what things look like now versus, and then as we are doing the extra construction work, would we be able to schedule a site visit sometime in the very near future? Of Stige?
A site visit where?
Stige,
The closed campus?
yes.
No. The closed campus, it's closed.
Okay, at what point will we be able to see with the school? During the construction phase, demolition phase, anything?
I think after demolition.
Okay,
Safety is a top priority for us. It will always be. And so we want you to be able to see it. It's incredible to see buildings come to life. So we'll definitely create opportunities, but we always have to do that with safety as our top priority.
I understand safety first. But I mean, at the same time, it's nice to be able to answer the questions from the public. Why are we spending $61 million on this school? And I mean, right now we're getting meager reports about the condition and why we're doing that. But being able to see it ourselves, be able to go out back out in the community is helpful. And not just the Stige, but on Kennedy and Richmond as well. Any of these schools, why are we spending this money? Because you're not only trying to explain to the public why are we spending the money, but why aren't you spending it on the 19 other schools that they all feel is more deserving? On the way home, I will be talking to one of the people that believes his school, Highland, deserves all this money, all $625 million left. And trying to explain to him that, no, you don't. It's hard to be able to get those kinds of answers to. Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
We don't have any
Okay,
hands
then
raised.
just go ahead and move on.
Hey, Don,
Sorry.
I've got an alternate suggestion that might be equally, interesting and viable that folks might be interested in. And that is, if it were, something that was amenable to the design build team. Alton's office is just a couple blocks down the street here. Maybe one time the CBOC could go over there, get a peek behind the curtain of how design build works, what they're doing, what's kind of going on behind the scenes of the design build team. I know that would be interesting for me I imagine others, since there are a lot of questions about kind of what that means and how it's different. And I would imagine they'd be happy to show folks around and kind of answer questions and.
We'll look into it, see what can be done. Okay,
And one more piece that I didn't get to state earlier is that we have not nailed down the location yet. So we don't have a formal announcement, but we do have on the website a save the date for a community meeting on February 24th. So Monday night, February 24th, 6:30. But like I said, we don't have a location nailed down just yet. We're still working on that, but it is listed on the website so far. And as soon as we have a location, the flyers will go out and we can send those to the CBOC.
thank you.
All right, terrific. Well, that completes our project reports. And so now we're going to transition into our financial reports. But before we do, I do just want to share the district West Contra Costa is committed to anti-racist work. And so as part of our staff presentation at every CBOC meeting, whenever the district gathers, we will share the land acknowledgement and the labor and body recognition. So I'll read that now and then I'll begin the financial reports. So for our land acknowledgement, we recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. The labor and body recognition. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today, of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States, and the author is Dr. Rachel Rogers-Martin. So for our financial reports today, there are two reports that aren't included in your packet, but they were sent out in the email. And so one of the things that I do want to share that I think is an important distinction is the project reports are always going to reflect the most recent pictures. But our financial reports are going to be 1 month behind us so that we can ensure that they've properly been reconciled and verified so that we're meeting our commitment to provide accurate information. And so when you look at the project reports, it'll say January. When you look at the financial reports, they'll be for December, but we will continue to bring these forward. And so this is our report 13, and I think it's a great place to start in the presentation of financial reports.
I promised everybody that we would use this as a minor training tool at the same time, so they understand what is project report 13, why is it important, what are we looking at, aside from just a bunch of numbers.
Absolutely, I'm happy.
I've talked to a lot of people over the past week, and recurring theme, we want training. What are we doing?
I'm happy to be your guide with financial reports today. And so we're going to start in the sky, and then we're going to come all the way down to the weeds. But starting in the sky. So report 13 is the big picture. And so you can think of this first page as your cover sheet. So I always think about, you see this notes over here on the right-hand side, how it says 1 and 2. Think of this first page as your cover sheet. And then if you want additional details about what makes up that number, then you go to the subsequent pages so that you can get the backup information. So this right here is our adjusted cash balance. So when we get to note 1, we'll look at what makes up that number. This here, these are our projected revenues. And so these are future dollars. And when we get to note 2, we'll take a look at those. But we do have $250 million remaining in authority of Prop R that we will need to go for sale for. When you do a bond sale, there is a cost of issuance associated with it, which would then be deducted from the sale. And then this is just an estimation of interest earnings, going all the way to June of 2029. So then our projected available funds is the total here that you see, excuse me, which takes our adjusted cash balance plus our projected revenues. So then here, when we get to note 3, we're looking at our budget balance. And so when we report on the bond program, we're going all the way back. In fact, we're going back to fiscal year 00. So we are reporting on 25 years, and we've got a footnote that'll take you back even further. When we look at budget balance, this is also linked to report 2, which is the report that we'll look at next. But this is giving you the overall board approved budget at almost 2.4 with a billion, less expenses to date at 1.7, leaving us with our current budget balance. So then when we take our projected available funds and oh no, my watch thinks I'm talking to it. I apologize for that, my watch. When we take our projected available funds and we subtract our budget balance, we ended up with our projected cash balance. Down here, we also have a new note. This is note number 4. And this is another thing that we refer to as below the line, meaning this is outside of what we're reporting. These are our state facility grants that are pending state approval. So we can go stand in line once we have a Division of State Architect approved set of plans, but we're sitting on a workload list, and at that point, it's really outside of our control. But we think it's really important to track that information and to share updates with all of you. So there's a number of different applications that have been submitted that based on the submitted amount, which a lot of times is different than the amount received, a lot of times in our favor, is about 16.7 million. So now let's dive into our notes so that we can get more information from our cover sheet. So note number 1 is our adjusted cash balance, and this really comes from our balance sheet. So you can see here the details, and this is as of December 31st from 2024. We also have further notes here. So if you wanted additional information about these items, A through D, that information is included here in the notes. Then we have here in note 2, these are projected revenues, and you can see for current and future fiscal years with our bond sale. This information can change. We work closely with our bond finance team, but this is the current projection. Note 3 was our budget balance, and you can see this information comes from report 2, which we'll take a look at next, and that essentially is our bond program on a page, and we cheated because it's two-sided, but we've got it all on there. Note 4, our state facility grants, and so these are the grants that we've submitted to the state. You can see here they're for the Lake Elementary School, Hercules Science, as well as Collins Elementary and Shannon Elementary. You can also see here that all of these applications were submitted for modernization. So those state dollars have different buckets. And so all of these happen to be in the same bucket for a total of 16.7. Then we have note 5 here. And this is really a summary of the 2016 facilities master plan. And so Here in the first column is the list of the schools as was board approved, the implementation plan model 1. And then we can see the project types here. This here, FMP, is the Facilities Master Plan 2016. These are the original budgets that were approved by the board back in 2016. And then here we have what the current approved budget is by the board. And so understanding the detail here, we have a couple of footnotes down at the bottom. So one of the things that we did is when we look at our financial reports, the science building, which we just opened, has 4 labs for middle school and 4 labs for high school. But since it's one project, we report that project under Hercules High School. So we leave that note there. And then we also have a note that the board did approve supplemental funding for Stige of $3 million from Fund 25. So when you look at the budget here for Stige, you see $58 million. And that's because this report is reporting on bond dollars. That is the charge of the CBOC, the oversight of bond expenditures. And so this is reflecting the bond budget, but we have the asterisks here so that we know that the total budget is 61 million, but 58 million comes from bond fund. There's a lot of footnotes here, but this is really great information. One of the things that was presented on December 18th was the projects that had been completed. They'd gone through a financial reconciliation and they were being closed. So there were project savings. These footnotes here identify all of the changes in the budget that the board has approved dating back to June of 2016. And so here you can see as budgets have increased and decreased, so that full detail is listed here along with the board meeting date. And then we had the board approve the implementation of Measure R. And so this was after the 2016 Facilities Master Plan, and we can see here that Measure R is comprised of the Kennedy Field and Bleachers Press Box project, which is completed. It had an original budget of 6.6 million. The actual ended up being just shy of 6.2, so those savings have been returned. And then we have the Kennedy and Richmond High School modernization projects. And again, we keep the notes here just in case you're keeping score at home and you want to follow those board approvals, because ultimately anytime we increase or decrease a project budget, it's approved by our board. And so we don't do that without board approval. One of our key internal controls. And so that is report 13. So when we were talking about budget balance, back here on note 2, it told us that this represents the board approved budgets and matches report 2. So now let's take a look at report 2. And so this is our bond program on a page. And so what we have here is really summary information by site. And so we represent elementary schools, then middle schools, then high schools, then central sites. And if we follow along the column, you can see here the last time that the board approved a budget change was on December 18th of 2024. And so that's what this represents. We have here the dollars expended going all the way back to fiscal year starting with 00 to our last fiscal year. So as a school district, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So we're currently in fiscal year 25 and it'll end in June 30th. That's how we are required to do our financial reporting. And so once we close the books, June 30, those are all our actuals. They're set in stone and they're final. So we keep here the summary of our actuals, and then we have a column that's representing the current fiscal year. So then if you take previous fiscal years plus current fiscal year, that's how you get the expended total, which is the total amount spent. Then we have our committed balance. So a commitment is either a contract or for us, it's a purchase order. We use a purchase order to buy things. We use a contract for services. And so this is how we can identify the commitments that we have. And then lastly, there's a budget balance that's left behind. The last column, notes, really kind of gives you that overall summary so that when we get to the footnotes at the bottom of the report, it kind of lets you know what's the status of this project. And so for a site that's been completed by the bond program, there's nothing else active happening at that site, it's going to have a footnote of 1. And so kind of when you think about what our active projects are, the projects that you're hearing about from Ms. Mejia Hooper, and some of the projects that are done, you can see there's activity for Lake and Shannon, for Stage, and then as we scroll to our second page, you can see the activity there for Hercules, Kennedy, Pinole, and Richmond. So you see how the financial information kind of lines up with those project status. The projects that we're talking about are the ones that are going to have the activity. There is central cost that's used to pay for the people supporting the projects. And then down here at the bottom, we have the footnotes. And so this is really that site level status. So when we look at a project report, which we'll jump into here in a second, for example, at Kennedy, there was the Kennedy Fields and there's the Kennedy Mod, there's the Kennedy Admin. Those are different projects, so we could look at it by a project. This is a report that really takes all of those projects and summarizes it for the site. Down here at the bottom, you can see we're even reporting on Measure E from 1998, which was mainly the Dijon Middle School project. And so we have that here as a footnote, and it is not included in the figures that you see above. But just for fun, here on our report, this is our column that summarizes our actuals, right? This 1.7. And then this column here summarizes our budgets, our 2.3, almost 2.4. And so those are the figures that you see on report 13. So report 13 is really like the full menu. And then if you wanted to focus on a particular component of the menu, there's other reports that provide a lot more detail. Any questions on that, or can we now go all the way down to the weeds and look at an AP checklist?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if everybody takes the first page of report 13 and put that, and then next to it, put the back page of report 2, and you look at the projected, budget balances, okay? The board approved budget balance is 3.393, and you look over here in column 2, and that's the same number. You look at the less expenses to date, and that's the next column. You look at the current balance, and that's 656 million. But when you look at the current balance all the way to the right, it's only 605 million. That's because you look in the expanded column or the committed column, there are bills you got to pay. So if you subtract that from the available, you'll come up with this 605. Any questions on that? I always check that out when
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
We'll take all the sets of ice we can get.
I look at that and I look at the notes. If it's a 1, I don't worry about it. If it's a 2 or a 3, then it should be on our chart where they tell you what they're doing, construction planning, whatever.
So I do have a question. When you stated, I think that was the Kennedy project, it finished under what was projected, and you stated that those funds were returned. are they returned back to the fund that those expenses came out of? Where's the balance returned to?
So it goes to the overall fund balance of the bond program.
Okay.
And so then the board, if they were to then approve a budget increase for another project, we would pull from that fund balance
Okay.
to do it. Excellent question.
So I have a quick question
Mhm.
about note 5.
Mhm.
The first line, steps and school size. What does that mean? We have
So
200.
one of the things, and now I'm gonna borrow one of Ellen's famous lines because it really helped me. So, and then she'll clean it up for me. So in 2016, part of the 2016 facilities master plan was looking at the ed specs and school size. So one of the things that Ellen taught me is she said an ed spec's kind of like the recipe for the school. What are all of the spaces that you need? What is the recipe for the school? And so as part of the overall approved budget for the 2016 facilities master plan, which was the 181.8, it included budgeted dollars to complete this work, to update the ed spec, for the implementation of the 2016 facilities master plan going forward. So if you have anything to add, please do.
So when I talked about those district-wide standards, the money that was used to write the original district-wide ed specs was this. So that's what set forward that standard that we're using, and we used it on Michelle Obama Lake and now Steech. There's also a high school version that we're using at Kennedy Richmond as the base point. And as far as the recipe goes, like every room type is a different ingredient, right? And so it tells you the quantity of how many different offices, how many different classrooms. So that's why we compare it to a recipe, is it's really talking about the quantity of each type of space that you need to make a school whole, as well as how to put it together. So what goes next to what, and why things work the way they do is included within that ed spec.
And we also use this money to update school sizes.
So there was a component of it that had a looking at the resolution that was included already in board policy. And so there was a review of that was done. It was a very small component of this.
And so if you wanted to track these dollars on the larger reports that we looked at, it would be in the central line.
Okay.
Melissa, next month, could you bring a KPI chart? Because it has a nice history of all the bonds that we've had, how much is left in them type thing.
So I'm happy to bring a component of it. We as a district, we're actually on break all of next week. And so we have about 10 days to prepare the documents for our next CBOC meeting. And I know there's a number of topics that we'll talk about later in the agenda that we'd like to have come forward. But I'm happy to bring forward the summary of the different bond measures, kind of the authority and where we are. Is that what you're saying?
I just want the chart. You don't have to give, because it just is a nice overview. And that's right in the report already, in the,
Yes. So I can
Okay, and
commit to
then-
that component.
Yeah,
Completing that in time.
very good, thank you.
So
Absolutely.
when I spoke with Melissa about a month ago about things that we were going to be needing, especially on the financial suite of reports, KPI was one of them. But because of how difficult it is and time consuming to get it, we had agreed to try to provide that on a quarterly basis. Beginning of March is kind of a little bit earlier than quarterly. So just bring that to your attention.
I just had a quick question on page 2 of this document. Are these all charter schools in the middle column, like Omega, Seaview, North Campus, Kappa?
So these are different district properties.
Okay.
And so a number of these properties that you see here, for example, Adams is no longer a school site. Cameron houses, we have a preschool sped program at Cameron. So these are different school district property locations.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And are they, but the bond dollars are being spent in similar ways as the school campuses?
So when we look at this report, this goes all the way back, to the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, so this goes all the way back to fiscal year 9900. And so those are the actuals that were spent at those sites for different times for different projects.
Okay.
Some of these, they're not just closed, they're demolished.
It's like, why have I never heard of any of these?
Well, CVU is one of them. We're part of the 7-Eleven committee I'm on. We're discussing what to be done with this surplus property, possible surplus. Same thing with the old Portals site,
Yeah.
vacant lot. At Harmon Knolls, vacant lot. But back there, beginning of time, they were still active schools. So money was being spent on them. And so that's included on this. And if I can, while we're waving this around, you're gonna hear me say this frequently. Report number 2 is probably the most important document that we, as representatives of the public, will get. Because you're gonna have all kinds of people that will try to say, you're not spending any money in my neighborhood, but you're not spending any money on my school. Yeah, we have. We heard this so many times from our mayor and city council member in Richmond that no money was being spent on Richmond kids. Well, funny how this comes up here and shows $850 million has been spent on Richmond kids. Oh, really? Well, they still tried to deny it. But this is something that's great to be able to, because it's actual numbers and it's current.
So the numbers we were just reviewing span like 26 years and they're very big numbers. And now we're gonna go all the way down into the weeds and we're gonna look at the numbers for checks that were cut. And so this was in January. And so this is our accounts payable checklist. And the way that this report is organized is we do summarize by site. So you can see the total for Cameron versus you can see the total here for Lake. So it's gonna give you the name of the vendor.
Wait, let us all get together.
Oh, okay, I'm
Do
sorry.
you have a page that it's on?
Yes, this is on page 33 of your packet. Or I think 3 pages you didn't
Page
count.
31 at the bottom of the page.
33.
Page 31.
I'm sorry, page 30, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, page 30. And for those joining us via electronic packet, page 33. Okay, so this is our accounts payable checklist. And so it is organized by site, as you can see here. And then it's got the vendor's name. So we can see for Cameron, there was a payment made to the Division of the State Architect. It has the check number, the check date. And here's that short account number, which is, we put essentially the first 4 segments of the account structure because it holds so much information. And so what the first 2 digits tell us is they tell us the fund. So whenever we see 21, we know it's coming out of our bond fund. The next 4 digits are what are called the resource, and this tells us which bond measure. So at the bottom, there's a key 9745 is measure D, 9748 is measure E, and 9747 is going to be measure R. So we know exactly what fund and what bond measure we use to pay for this expense. The next 4 digits we call the object. And the object essentially identifies what we were paying for. And so earlier when you asked that great question about design versus construction, design has a different object than construction. So if we wanted to sort by design, we could see all of the design costs together. If we want to see just construction. And so the standard account, code structure, the SACS code, it helps us to isolate and run reports when we're trying to query the data in different ways. The last 3-digit numbers tell us the site. And so you'll notice when you look at this report, since it is grouped by site, you'll notice that the last 3 digits are always going to be the same. And for us as a school district, our elementary schools start with their 100s, middle schools are 200s, and high schools are 300s, centrals are 600s. But that's a really good way to get down to that granular level and really understand exactly how we're paying for that expenditure. Then we have the invoice number and the invoice date, along with the amount, and then we do have a brief description here. So this gives you a list of the expenditures that were made. And if I could take you just really quickly, I'd like to jump back to the beginning of the packet, because as we discussed at the last CBOC meeting, we did add some important links, Dawn added some important links to the CBOC agenda. So it's going to be on your paper packet, it's page 3. On your electronic packet, I'm going to guess, here we go, it's page 6. And so we talked about both the PMP, which will be bringing more information about the project management plan to the CBOC. But we also talked about the online reporting portal. So if you wanted to take a look at program level information or project specific financial information at any time, you would be able to do that via our online reporting portal, which I'm going to move into the screen so that everyone can see.
By the way, this will be a permanent fixture on the agenda packets.
Okay, well, something is wrong with the link, so I'm gonna have to get that fixed. But I have it since I go all the time. Let's go on. Okay, well, this was a failed experiment.
Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, can you
I
put the
also-
link in the chat? I did just want to show you guys.
So did you try clicking on that link there?
Yeah, I don't know why it didn't work.
Okay. I copied and pasted what I was sent.
So I don't know what's happening between the link
Right.
and online.
Double check my notes.
Suppose I had to fix that before next agenda packet, huh?
I think the site might be down, because my
Okay.
standard link doesn't work either.
So, we will have an update on that at the next meeting. But on the reporting portal, one of the things that's important to note, if you're comparing between the reports being presented at the CBOC meeting and going on the online portal, the reporting portal, that's live data. So when you click on the link, you might see it scroll in it because it's querying the data live. So we're putting that information in daily with the transactions that are taking place, and the financial reports that'll be included in the packet will be reconciled with a very specific date. But on the reporting portal, which we'd love to bring to you at the future meeting, and I will provide an email update on it. You can run the information by program, or you can select a specific project. And some of the feedback that we've received about the reports is to also include some graphics. Some of us are visual, and we really want to see the data come alive in charts and tables. And so we've really tried to do that on the reporting portal so that you're looking at the same information, but maybe just in a different presentation, so that we can make it more accessible to everyone. And so the program level information is available, as well as project specific reports. And I'm sorry, I don't know why the link's not working, but that essentially concludes the financial reports presentation for this evening. Any other questions?
I'd just like to make a suggestion. since tonight you were talking about, Fund 25
Mhm.
is used for transitional kindergarten, non-bond fund.
Mhm.
Could you put that down the bottom, because you're starting to build these institute, a transitional kindergarten, and it'd be good, for the key down the bottom.
Absolutely. So we have that footnote on report 13, because on report 13, we're reporting on the full project and overall. We wouldn't reflect that on the AP checklist, because on the accounts payable checklist, we're just reflecting bond expenditures, because the CBOC's oversight is on bond funded expenditures. So we don't report on expenditures for other funds on this report. But we do have the footnotes here on report 13 when we're talking about budget. So we added that here along with the date for the meeting. And if there are other places where we're reporting on overall budget where you don't see that note that you'd like us to add it, please let me know and we'd be happy to add that information there.
Will those construction projects be listed in our booklet at all? So they're listed in the booklet.
Which booklet?
They're listed in the chart where you have your status of the different projects.
Mhm.
So they're part of the bigger projects. So we report out on all bond funded projects, whether they're totally funded by bond or partially funded by bond. So because there's still bond funding being utilized for it, we will report it out as a full project, because the people out in the world don't care what funding source we use. They want to make sure we're building a full school. So if I leave out all mention of transitional kindergarten, people are going to be like, hey, what's that building over there? Because there'll still be a building, right? And so in the project information, we'll continue to report it out as a full project. However, in the financial reports, you'll see the information on what's being reflected out of the bond account.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions from the CBOC?
I do. I just wanted to, just really quickly, I think I missed what you said when you were going over the AP checklist. In that, the short account information, the first number was reflective of the bond fund. The
Mhm.
second 4-digit number was reflective of the measure resource.
Mhm.
What was that third 4-digit number reflective of?
So that's the object code, and that reflects essentially what the services are. And so if it's construction versus if it's design services, or if it's special inspections. And one of the things that I'd be happy to share when we get the chance to present the program management plan. So we have basically a document, it's our program management plan, that provides a lot of details, and it'll give you the full listing of all of the different objects that we have in our bond program. So whenever you see those 4 digits, you'll know. One of the reasons why we really put together the program management plan was we wanted to make sure that as we continue to implement the program, that we did it consistently. When you have consistency in your implementation, then you have consistency in your reporting. We also do it that way because it follows the Office of Public School Construction. There's a form that we submit when we want to seek funding from the state. And so our object codes are actually created in alignment with that. And so we created the program management plan, one, to ensure that no matter who was here implementing the bond program, that they were doing it kind of uniformly and ensuring that the internal controls that were put into place continued to be followed. We also did it in a way where we were hoping that it made it more transparent about what we were doing. And so if there was something like object codes or project delivery methods or education specifications that you wanted to learn more about, that you could then go to that guide and just do a quick control find. And there's like a little narrative about it, as well as all of the different forms and flow charts that we use here internally to implement the program uniformly.
Yes, I'd love to show you that sheet. 'Cause it's in there.
I would love to see it. Thank you.
Also, you have a munis manual.
We do. And one of the things we're working on right now, spoiler alert, we've been in need of an update. And we've been busy, but we're prioritizing that update now because things change. And they don't change. They change because the statutory threshold increases annually by CDE. They change because the org chart looks a little bit different. They change for different types of reasons, and it's important that while a lot of that base internal control stays the same, our Munis manual updates, right? Just like any software, there's new versions. And so we need to make sure that we continue to update all of the different resources that are included in the bond program management plan, and we're working on that update right now.
And when you talk about, when you get, go to the board, meetings, and you talk about change orders, whatever, you have the full account code
We do.
on there. And so it's like, what, 7 different, components of it, and it'd be nice to, you know, to have that information.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to share, just because I'm really proud of it, is that's actually part of our board policy. So we have board policy that says that when we bring forward that information, that we provide the full account code to ensure transparency. So you know exactly, one, that we're taking from budgeted dollars, and then 2, you know exactly where those funds came from.
Anything else from the CBOC? Okay, do we have any public comment?
Not at this time.
Well, that's good enough for me. Okay, I want everybody to pay attention to that big thing on the wall over there. See, it's a little after 8 o'clock. Technically, we get about 15 minutes to cover at least an hour and a quarter's worth of business. Okay, we're gonna do, what I'd like to do is to defer a few items, but take care of some very simple items real quickly, and then we'll deal with the other items that are more important. We need to get some of these taken care of.
We now have a quorum. I
What?
don't know if you've mentioned that. We now have a quorum.
I did mention it when it
So do
happened.
we have to approve the agenda? Things like that.
Well, I'm not gonna waste my time on approving an agenda when I'm trying to get the more important items out there, okay? Especially since I'm planning on changing the agenda in just a couple seconds. All right, so we, on the consent calendar items, we're gonna take care of that in a few minutes. On item I, new member applications, it's for information only. It's just, if there's no objection, we'll just accept it as presented. Same thing with item J, the rolling attendance log, just information. I would like to defer the CBOC membership discussion on the application process until the next meeting, because that will take about 10 or 12 minutes at minimum. Okay, the chairperson report is timely because so I'll be doing that in a few minutes. The item M, the financial and performance audits. Okay, very important stuff, but we don't have time for it tonight. I'd like to bring it up and defer it to the next meeting. There's no objection. Okay. The bylaws amendments in item N are very important. They're time sensitive, so we'll try to get those things. On the item O, the annual report. Yeah, we just don't have enough time for it tonight. We'll bring it back up at the next meeting. Defer that. It's okay. All right. Whoa, I got two item O's. Okay, calendar. Yeah, it's just information. Shows our meetings, shows the board meetings. Okay, we will get to the item P, the future agenda topics at the very end before we leave, because something may come up between that now and then. Okay. And we'll take a look as we go along to see if we want to extend the meeting so we can get these time sensitive issues taken care of.
Can I share a quick point of order?
Yes.
shared in the Q&A, from trustee Smith-Folds that we did have 3 board members. And so, they weren't able to talk. We now have 2 board members. We have President Reckler and trustee Smith-Folds. So we now have 2. So I just wanted to share that update, for the
Thank
good
you.
of the order.
Go back to page 3 of your agenda, the consent calendar items. What we have is the information request log. We have 2 sets of minutes. If anybody wants to have any of these pulled for discussion, addition, amendment, revision, now is the time to say that. Lorraine, one of those minutes was ones you were talking about?
Well, you've taken care of the January one, is this, do we have to pass it as amended, or, because the one you gave me was corrected?
We have to. Let me pull that one off of there. We can discuss it real quick and then pass it, okay?
Okay.
All right, but we have to do something to pass it. If there's no objection, then we'll go ahead and accept the information request log. There hasn't been any change in that in several months. On the minutes themselves, okay, for the January 13-25 minutes. Okay, it was pointed out that some of the items were not formatted as best they could. It was grouped together on how they were addressed. And all I've done is we had a handout on there. All we've done is reformatted the amendments or the minutes so that each item is a separate item. Just as it was reflected on the agenda. But do we have any other amendments to these minutes for January? If there's no objection, then we'll accept them as presented, as revised, I should say. Okay. Also, when we have joint meetings, we are supposed to have our own minutes for those, because you've got a CBOC meeting and you've got a board meeting. Well, we've been going with the board meeting minutes, there's hardly anything there. Now, I drafted the minutes for the April meeting. I will be drafting minutes for the September meeting, but we have those for your consideration. If there's any objection.
I just have the amendment about, Brandon is not absent. He was not absent.
All right.
He came in late.
There was no record of him being there. Okay, I recall it happening, but again, that's what the minutes from the district shows that he wasn't there. So, and there was nothing in the video about that. But we'll see if I've got any kind of notes I've got that shows what time he showed up, but we'll make the amendment on that if it's okay with everybody. Okay. Then item H has been taken care of. We'll take care of IJK. On to page 5 right now. We got a chair report. I apologize, not a short one, but I guarantee you in future meetings it will be shorter. Okay, as we start off this new year, we have close to $660 million in 3 projects that fall under our oversight. We are the appointed eyes and ears for the public, so it's incumbent for us to be as diligent as we can be. This is not to say that our elected Board of Education or our facilities team is or will do anything that is not in the best interest of the more than 250,000 residents of West County. On the other hand, sometimes what's important to them may not be important to our neighbors. Our bond program is like a 3-legged stool, with each leg representing the board, the staff, and then the people of West County. And while the CBOC needs to exert its independence, we have to keep our feet firmly placed on planet Earth. That is, we have a symbiotic relationship with the board and staff. None of us can exist without the others. If even one of those legs were to be weakened or undermined, then the stool collapses. As we redraft our bylaws, we'll hear demands that we exert our total and unequivocal independence, which in principle is a good thing. But in the real world, the legislation that created the CBOC also says that the elected Board of Education appoints us to the CBOC. It also says that the district provides us with support. Once again, we come back to that 3-legged stool analogy. One of the best ways we can keep the board and the public aware of what's going on with the bond program is through the monthly standing reports. This is where the board allows a couple of dozen committees an opportunity to make a 5-minute presentation. In the many years I've been involved with this, I can't recall ever seeing more than 3 reports at any given meeting. In my previous years as chair of the CBOC, I took every opportunity to give a report. There was even a brief period when the superintendent screwed up and I was afforded more than one opportunity per month to report. Of course, I took advantage of those opportunities. I know that people were listening because on my way back to my seat, I would frequently get 2 to 3 texts or emails thanking me for my reports and the information I shared with them. Recently been advised that I need to tone down these reports though, because in the past I've advertised to the public the shortfalls of the board and the staff when it came to the lack of support that they were providing the CBOC. On the problems I'm facing with these reports is that the scheduled nights for many of these reports are the same nights that I need to attend a meeting in Martinez. Attendance at that meeting is part of my job and I actually get paid to attend. I need the money. I'm working with board president Reckler to see if we can schedule these reports on nights when I don't have a conflict. She seems to be receptive to the idea. I've rearranged my schedule for this Wednesday night and have requested to be slotted in. These reports will then be included in our agenda packets, so there's a record of what was reported. There are a couple of issues of importance that I will be emphasizing this year. One will be site visits with an emphasis on Kennedy and Richmond Heights. We need to start these visits as soon as possible so we can see why we're spending over $650 million of the taxpayers' money. Please keep in mind that the $650+ million is borrowed money and the interest alone is more than $1.3 billion. So we're talking about nearly $2 billion for these rebuilds. Some of us will be paying for these for the rest of our lives, so should we be sure that the money is being properly spent? I think so. In particular, we need to be able to answer the public why these schools are being rebuilt. For instance, is a near total rebuild necessary or can our needs be met with a more modest revision? A second item of concern is our bylaws. They're a fluid document and need to be periodically updated. They've been butchered so badly over the years that a total rewrite is really the best option. We've already started on this. This leads us into the third area of concern, the minutes. The minutes of these meetings are a critical part of the oversight. If any of you were to go back through our archives and review the minutes of our CBOC meetings in recent years, would you have any real idea what happened at the meetings? Using only those minutes, could you say that the CBOC has been doing their job? In my opinion, we need a more comprehensive set of minutes and they need to be current. We'll be discussing this more when we get to the bylaws agenda item, but I ask you to please fully grasp the need for proper minutes. I'm suggesting that as a part of our bylaws that we incorporate a set of guidelines so we have some consistency. Most people don't know how to draft minutes and this might help. It's also important to me that we don't spend any more time than absolutely necessary on our minutes. These guidelines might help. The fourth item is CBOC attendance. We need a commitment from each of you to ensure that we all show up at each meeting in person and that we arrive ready to go to work at the agreed upon time and that we stay till the meeting is concluded, as much as possible at least. The Brown Act is a great tool to ensure transparency, but it's a double-edged sword when we don't have a quorum and we're not able to do our jobs. And lastly, the annual report absolutely must be a significant part of our permanent record. We put together a team to do this work. We've had them as short as 2 pages and we've had them in well over 100 pages. Lorraine's been chairing this work, but she'll be termed out in 6 weeks. We need to have a seamless transition to a new team willing to put in the time and the effort. At our next meeting, we'll be going into more depth about that, what we'll need done, and when we'll need it done. Prepare yourselves for that. Maybe asking a lot more of you than we volunteered for. The fourth item of concern is to report on tonight will be about outreach. Each of us needs to reach out to whatever communities we can to spread the word about what's going on with the bond program and what the community can do. We need to extend this also to soliciting applicants so we have a full complement of our 11 available positions. Back when we had 28 members of the CBOC as compared to our current 11, we used to have a dozen or more applications waiting in the queue. This too will be brought up next month. Before I end this weekly report, I'm going to ask for help from each of you. Please reach out to me whenever you can with ideas, suggestions, comments, anything that you might think may be of value to the oversight of our bond program. We have a responsibility, and I'm sure that none of us wants to let our communities down. This isn't a one-person operation. It's a team effort, which means that we need each team member to contribute when and where they can. And I'm done with that. Are there any comments from anybody, including the public, on this? Okay. Okay. We have Okay. This one's a little bit more important, the bylaws amendments. Okay. Last month, I presented 19 pages of bylaws, proposed bylaws amendments. We're not even gonna be touching on those tonight. What I'm suggesting, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of things that I would suggest and propose that we add as appendices to the minutes or to the bylaws that might make things a little bit easier for us. I'm gonna deal with some of these things, the short and simple ones that hopefully aren't too controversial, including a copy of the California Education Codes, so that we will be able to have easy reference to find out what the laws say, what we can and can't do or should do. Is this acceptable to everybody? Do we need a motion to? No. Okay. If there's no dissent, then we'll add that. Also, some of these things we'll be adding to our website as just general information. Then you also have a copy of the 2000 Prop 39 text showing the exact language of the Proposition 39. Is this acceptable to add as well? All right.
Are we gonna be going through each one of these items?
We just did two.
I'm sorry?
That's what I was asking, if it's okay to just accept them as, because they're not controversial, they're just a reprint of what's readily available online from the state of California.
I think that it would be important for us to go through them together as a community.
To go through the ed codes and the text of Prop 39.
For what applies to us as a community.
Well, these all apply to us as a community.
Mhm.
Okay, that's going to be a monumental task. I can reschedule them to bring them back,
Okay.
but
Perhaps, Lynn, do you mean you want training on them so you know what's in them, right?
No, ma'am.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I think it's important that we go through them as a community.
okay. I mean, it's just we've got a limited amount of time at each one of our meetings, and that by itself for those three would take about 3 hours. Okay, that's the point. But if you want to do that, I'll schedule it. And then I'm betting you're thinking the same thing for the Attorney General's analysis of Prop 39. These were the arguments for and against and the rebuttals that was on the ballot
I'm aware.
24 years ago.
Yeah, I'm aware. I think we're already aware of what the Prop 39 is, but for the others, I think that we should go through.
The others.
For I'm sorry, let me articulate differently what I'm trying to say. So for the action items that are here for the bylaws and for the amendments to the bylaws, you're wanting to add these as appendices to those bylaws.
Yes.
I was saying, I think that it is important that we go through them to discover what it is in them that we're going to be adding to, so to make sure that everyone that's a part of the committee is aware of what's in what we're going to be adding to the bylaws. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. Adding to the bylaws does not negate the fact that they are state law. They are
Absolutely.
been passed by the,
Understood.
all right.
They're like source documents.
Yes, they are.
Don,
Yes.
if I may, what's the point of adding these to the bylaws?
So,
I mean, they obviously apply to us regardless, right?
yes, they do, but it's a source of information so that you don't have to look them up, because it wasn't as easy to find these things, especially the ed codes. They're not all in one place as easy to find. I mean, it took piecing them together. And
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, they'll be on our website, right? You're
Well-
going to put this information on the website also.
well, I mean, that was the plan, but then it's been asked to bring them back before we do that.
So point of clarification, Dawn did send an email and ask that we add the ed code, Prop 39 text, and the analysis to the CBOC website, and we've already did that. We added it under resources. but we did not add the draft CBOC meeting minute guidelines and CBOC minute template.
Okay.
But we did add the three that you asked us to add to the website, and then I believe you sent an email after that asking for some additional things
No, I just
to
said
be
that the-
added
Yeah, I've
to the
got
website.
the Contra Costa County, the propositions or the bond measures.
Mhm.
And
And
the
we're,
bond measures, on there are like from other groups. It's not the official.
so all we've added so far are the three that Dawn had sent last week, which are the last three items listed here, the California Ed Codes, the Prop 39 text, and the Prop 39 analysis.
Right.
Okay,
Well, that was just a discussion. It wasn't, probably we want to vote on it if we wanted to add it. Whoever does the website.
we can take care of that. Okay,
Oh, I just want to say it's 8:20. Do we need a motion to extend our meeting?
no, because we don't have any set time when the meeting is supposed to end. We strive for 2 hours. Go ahead, right.
I just want to say that the first two items, the minutes, the guidelines and the template, they are in the format that Don had mentioned, the longer format. So I just want you to be aware of
Called the discussion format.
that.
All right. Do we want to continue with the meeting, or do we want to go home? I need input from the,
I can stay until about 8:30.
okay, we can't get this done at 8:30.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Or are you gonna, when you're discussing, down at the bottom says call public comment, are you gonna get that later?
Well, when we get to the item, we haven't even discussed the item yet.
Okay, but you're talking about item N, the bylaws amendments, okay? And at the bottom there, it says, call for public comment, and I was gonna wonder, are you gonna do that or not?
No, it's gonna happen, but we haven't even brought up the item yet. So we don't call for comments before we've even brought up the item for discussion.
Okay, so you're gonna do it later.
Yes. Okay, but I said, we cannot get this done. We got the future agenda items and closing meeting. It's gonna take about 3 minutes. So we're only talking 5 minutes left to cover these things. We can't do it in that amount of time, not even close. Okay, so why don't we just defer item N completely, okay? And the last item we've got on there, are there any future agenda items that you want to add to the list? Anybody?
So, schedule site visits, would that be an agenda?
Actually, wasn't that on there? No, we could have site visits. Any other future?
Question, I don't have an agenda item to add, but if any of the board members think of something they would want to add between now and the next meeting, is there an opportunity to do so, or is this it?
No, call me, email me, text me. I don't see, you live a long ways away, so I'm not sure I see the smoke signals. And I confused, sorry, don't do the smoke signals, people swear it's flaring from Chevron. Okay, no, all you gotta do is just give me a call, we have the item on the agenda, I mean, the future agenda.
Ideally, then we'll give you a few days at least, right?
Well, more than that, yeah. I mean, almost every item requires help from staff and they don't have time to do most of what we ask anyway. I try to give them as much time as I can. Yes,
Also, it may not go on the next agenda.
no, I mean, because
It's time consuming, to see if you have time, but it will be on one agenda in the future.
I mean, the things we've talked about putting on the next month's agenda is about 4 to 6 hours worth of stuff. Obviously, something's gonna have to be deferred.
So suggestions to remove items from the agenda?
And if I could just share, in March, we have the regular CBOC meeting and then we have the joint board CBOC meeting. And so agenda review, will be with, board leadership and CBOC leadership. And so if you're calling for agenda items for the CBOC meeting or for the joint meeting, just because the question of that.
Yeah, well, our next meeting is 2 days before the agenda setting session. Okay, so, I mean, that will be an item and it'd be a hard and fast item on there, no pulling it off the agenda. Because coming up with agenda items for the joint meeting after the joint meeting is concluded, is not gonna work for us. Okay. Before we actually adjourn, one thing I do need to ask, we need to keep an eye on that clock all the time in our discussions. Okay, because we covered the first third of the agenda in the first hour and 45 minutes. That didn't leave us any time left for everything else. And some of these things are more time sensitive. Okay, so just keep it in mind. We used to have meetings that got out of here at 9:30, 10 o'clock on a regular basis. What time do you guys start?
This morning. Clock.
Okay.
7:15.
We don't want to keep them in here any longer than have to. And as I've told many of you, I don't have a life. I understand you have lives. Some of you even have day jobs where you gotta be at work tomorrow morning, so we want to get out of here as quickly as we can. Okay? So if there's nothing else, then we'll go ahead and adjourn at 8:26. Thank you for your attendance, participation.
Thank you,
Thank you, John.
everyone. Just, no, we adjourned, but there was a message from trustee Smithfold that says, everyone on the CBOC is a valued member. I want to caution everyone to be kind in their communication. This meeting feels unnecessarily tense. There's no need to comment. Thank you for the meeting. I just wanted to share that on the record. Sorry. It was late. I missed it.
Also, before we get out of here, don't forget, Lorraine brought these. Becoming an Effective Watchdog by Mr. Brian Scott over here. I have 3 copies, one of which has been marked up just a little bit. We used to have 4, but one of them fell into my backpack, sorry. But if anybody wants one of these right now, we may get more, but first come, first serve.
I have one actually.
Okay.
You did good,
Yeah.
good.
Can I borrow one?
You want the mark or unmarked?
I think I just marked the initials on the front, that's it.
What are the other lines?
Oh, are there?
Yes, I
Thank you,
saw that.
everyone.
Okay, anybody else want one of these others?
Yeah, can I borrow one too?
Well, that's not borrow, you can have it.
Eventually, the Contra Costa taxpayer